for years, and this was a big reason why I wanted to study a lot of this work also, was um, for years I would coach people in health and fitness, and one person would get a result, and then
Mm.
one person wouldn't get a result. One person would get a result and keep it, the other person would get a result and lose it. And I would see loads of motivated people come into the gym in January, every single January.
Yeah.
February, the same motivated people who said at the start of the year that this was the year they're going to get in the best shape of their life were gone. So only a certain percentage of people stayed. And what I started to discover and understand was not everybody values health and fitness. We all know how important it is, but not
Mm.
everybody values it. Not everybody values going out to work. Not everybody values family. Not everybody values business. We all have a unique fingerprint of values that's important to us. But if I can get to understand the person better, and I can get to understand what they actually really do value, then I can link the thing that they want to do that's lower in that priority to something that's higher, so they find more meaning and purpose in it.
Seamus Fox, it's a pleasure to meet you and to welcome you to the Inner Entrepreneur podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this morning's conversation.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it also. Interestingly, when I was doing some research on you, obviously before I invited you on the show, and I found out a couple of interesting things. And the first thing is obviously you're a speaker, you're a coach, you're a mentor to CEOs, entrepreneurs, and high achievers, which all sounds great. And then I looked at your YouTube clip, and my mother used to say this. She used to say, "It's far from that you were reared." And when I looked at your YouTube clip, I thought, God, this is an impressive guy, and then I thought, it's far from that he was reared. No insult intended, but in fact, it makes you more believable. But when I listen to your TED talk, and you certainly came from a how would you describe it? A very underprivileged family and background. So one would have thought your trajectory was in an entirely different direction to where you've ended up. Now, to me, that makes it very, very interesting because it's very easy for successful people to talk about success. And a lot of people listening to this will be people thinking, well, my life's a bit of a mess. How do I get out of it? So I think your backstory would be a great place to start. Tell us about your upbringing and tell us about the road you probably should have been on.
Yeah, yeah, and 100%, I completely resonate with everything that you said there, Paul. Um, yeah, I grew up in Derry here in Northern Ireland. I'm a child of the 80s. I'm the youngest of seven, so I was actually called the spoilt one in the house.
Spoiled
I
one.
was the spoilt one in the house. I'm the youngest of seven. I had a great upbringing. I loved, obviously, I grew up in a loving family. I grew up in a place called Galia, which is kind of on the outskirts of Derry City. Um, Went to school in St. Bridget's. School was nothing. It just wasn't something that I felt inspired by. I couldn't really find what it was about. Didn't really get really any interest from it. Wasn't interested in some of the stuff that they were teaching me. They were trying to put me into a box. Looking back with hindsight, it just wasn't something that I felt really interested in. But I was very heavily involved in sport. I loved playing football. Did a bit of boxing as well too. Boxing was a big thing in my family. But growing up through the 80s and the 90s in Northern Ireland at that time was like, it was pretty heavy at some stages. There was a lot of
Of course.
conflict that was going on. So I suppose unconsciously looking back, you've got a lot of those environmental things that have an impact on you for sure. My parents were unemployed. We lived on benefits. And again, those types of things had an impact on me, but not from a negative point of view. Because sometimes we can look back and blame this and blame that. That's not kind of my mindset at all. I look at those things and see how they've actually served me. The voids are often the things that actually shape who you are. The voids that will create the value for you in terms of you driving forward and creating what you want to create. So, yeah, I left school at 15, 16, Paul. Didn't really kind of know what I wanted to do and got stuck into kind of labouring. You name a job, I've probably done it. From being
But just to interrupt your flow there, sorry, but one thing that jumps out there is I think you said both your parents were on unemployment benefit, but you said something to me that's really key. You said you grew up in a loving family,
yeah,
and and when we talk about lack of privilege, we usually mean financial. And I think what I've discovered over the years is that I don't know if it's the lack of money in a household, but a lack of money maybe tends to lead to a mindset and behaviors and environment, and that's what's damaging. Where if you bring a child up in a household that doesn't have a lot of money, but you are teaching them values, and they feel loved and cared for, now you're nurturing a human being that has so much more potential than their background might suggest.
Yeah. When you're a kid, you don't know any different anyway. You're in that environment.
Yeah. Well, unless you're starving or you're being abused or something,
Yeah. Like, if you look at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, my needs were being met in that
your needs were being met.
100%.
Yeah.
Of course.
You had a roof over your head, you were being cared for, loved.
Yeah.
You just weren't wealthy.
Yeah. It wasn't down, and it wasn't like you were down and out. And
Yeah.
where I grew up, everybody else was the same. The only thing that
It
I
was
look back
that was
on,
life.
yeah, the only thing that I look back on with reflection was just, as you said, it was kind of the environment that I grew up around. So there were certain things now that I look at as an adult with my kids. I wouldn't want my kids to be growing up in and around. So, but again, it was different times, different period, different environment completely that I grew up in.
Are you referring to the conflicts that would have been going on at that stage?
Yeah, so you had a lot of those types of things that were going on.
Yeah.
Just, I think the overall energy almost that kind of
Yeah.
contributed to as well, for sure. Um,
Well, Northern Ireland had to have been a difficult place to be in the or to grow up in the 80s because I grew up in Southern Ireland, but there would have been that tension in the air, I imagine.
yeah,
I suppose on a positive, not to get political, but on a positive note, I think it, people have largely forgotten about that at this stage.
mm,
And it wasn't that long ago, but people who didn't grow, I was born in the 60s, but still the people that didn't grow up around that, um, they have forgotten what an environment that was to grow up in and what it must be like, and and the challenges that can bring to people.
yeah, 100%. And some of the things that we normalized was just not normal. Some of the
Yeah,
things that
yeah,
I grew up around, I'm glad that my kids don't grow up around. Like, I actually had a
of course.
conversation with I was on a podcast as a guest in Dublin a few weeks ago, and I had that conversation. I says, and I remember one of my classmates we were in primary six. He got caught in a bomb, and he went through years and years of facial reconstruction and surgery and all sorts. Him and his mum. And you were a kid, you were just like, oh, that kind of happened to him, and it was just
Yeah,
normalized. It wasn't normal at all.
yeah,
So I think you have a lot of those things, Paul, that's probably going on at an unconscious level. You're not really fully aware of it. I think until you grow up, but those things shape you. Your environment shapes you. I love using James Clear's quote. He says, "Environment is the invisible hand that shapes human behaviour." So your environment a lot of the times will shape you. And as I said, it's not to look back and go, oh, "Woe me," or any of that sort of stuff. Um, I got what I needed in order for me to grow and move forward. But for years, definitely, I felt like I wasn't on the right path. Left school at 15, 16. Didn't really have any clue about where I was going to go and what I was going to do. And the career that I got myself into, for the want of a better word, was selling illegal goods around Northern Ireland. So selling counterfeit goods.
great career choice. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a lot of ducking and diving, and there was a lot of like just trying to fend for yourself. I moved out of home when I was young, and I was trying to create a life for myself, trying to feed myself, and trying to create a pound basically. And that led me down a few different paths, Paul. Yeah, for sure, 100%. So yeah, it wasn't straight laced, but finally we started making the right moves.
So some of those, so obviously they went great paths to walk down, but walking down one of those paths, if I remember correctly, was ultimately what led you to a wake up call, a moment that goes, I have to change. And what was that moment for you?
Yeah, it was a car crash. So it was, I think it was maybe around 21, 22. I'd fallen into a pattern of just going out, partying, nightclubs, things like that. Just feeling lost, if I'm being totally honest. I didn't know who I was, what my purpose was, who I was supposed to be, what I was supposed to do. Um, and then one weekend I crashed my car head on into the wall, completely out of my mind. And I had no real recollection of getting into the car or even really anything before it. I had been partying for a couple of days. Um, and it was at 10:30 on a Saturday morning in the Brandywell in Derry, if anybody's familiar with it. and commotion ensued. Just absolute commotion. I got out of the car. There was a guy there who, an angry onlooker, thought I was a joyrider. He came in and smashed me in the face and busted my head off the concrete. Got up, commotion, and I tried to get away. Now, in hindsight, after a bit of work, I've seen that not getting away was a massive benefit. The police arrested me, took me through me into a police cell, took me bloods, put me back into the cell again, and then they let me out that night. I woke up the next morning in my flat. I had a bottom floor flat in Galia, covered in blood, and asking myself the question, what happened? Like, what just happened? What's going on? What am I doing? Why am I in this pattern? Started asking myself those questions. Paul, I was as low as a snake's belly for weeks and weeks after. I'd lost my license, the job that I did have, I lost that, was back on the dole again, signing on the brew, and just fucking asking myself, where am I supposed to go here? What am I supposed to do? And the thing that I've always been interested in, and the thing that I've always done, was sport. I've always been involved in health and fitness. I've always been involved in sport. And for those short years, the period of those years, I'd fallen away from that. I'd fallen away from the thing that I've always really done. And we can talk about that as we go, the hierarchy of your values. And when you're not living by your own values, and when you're trying to be somebody else and you're trying to do something else, life has a way of getting you back on track again. And that event was that for me. It kind of got me back.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's interesting that you've reframed that, and you've realized what you benefited from that instant. But also, I'm picturing you that day waking up, lying in blood, and the police. You've spent the previous night in a prison cell, um, and you obviously a moment. There was a moment of awareness there where you began to go, "Hold a sec, my life isn't this shit here." Um, I think probably a lot of people get to that point and they feel sorry for themselves, or they go, "I need to get another fix, or I need to, get a bottle of vodka, or whatever. I need to do something." But you chose to look at it, to kind of look yourself in the mirror and go, "Yes, you are on your knees here." And because you looked at it, you were then able to ask the question of, "Well, how do I do something different?" But it seems a lot of people get stuck in that loop.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd love to say that, that was the ultimate realization that I had at that time, but it wasn't. I
It
was
wasn't.
I was 22. I was just a kid, really,
Yeah.
looking back. But I knew that I had to change. I knew that I had to do something
Mm,
different, and I knew that what I was doing wasn't who I wanted to be. It wasn't where I wanted to
mm,
be. And the only thing that was like there at that time for me to get stuck into, this is the day before like coaches and mentors and YouTube and all those things. The only thing that I felt natural for me to do and get my head into was back into training again. So I joined
mm,
a local bodybuilding gym, and I got my head down, started training, started getting back into health and fitness, wanted to grow, and kind of got the bodybuilding bug. Um,
mm,
and then literally a couple of years later, I started competing as a bodybuilder. I won a local show, Mr. Northern Ireland, first timers category, and that kind of gave me a platform, and it also gave me an opportunity to then start personal training, which is how I started out as a coach almost 20 years ago now. So yeah, the quote a mentor of mine, he says, "Wisdom is the instantaneous recognition that a crisis is a blessing."
mm.
The faster that we're able to see both sides, the faster that we can adapt. It took a bit of time for me, for sure.
That has to be a DeMartini quote.
It is, yeah, yeah. But at that time, it wasn't something that I was fully aware of, and it took a lot more
Mm.
processing than having that wisdom and the fast process of seeing both sides, for sure.
It's interesting. This morning, I went for a walk with my wife along the beach, and she was telling me that someone in Ireland has overnight won 250 million or something. So, we're having a conversation. Um, I said to her, "That's a whole lot of problems for somebody, because 250 million is an extraordinary amount of money." And I was saying, that could lead to so many problems. I said, and look at so many of the children of very, very, very wealthy people and how they're completely messed up. She rightly said, "Yeah, but look at all the poor people who are also completely messed up." She said, "So maybe she said, no, maybe it's not money. Having it, you get messed up. Don't having it, you get messed up. And I thought about it for a moment. I said, yeah, I think it's purpose.
Mm.
I think that when you've never had money and you suddenly have 250 million or whatever, it's like, now, if your purpose has just been getting out of bed and doing a job, well, now you've no purpose. So you lack purpose in life, and you look for the things you buy to fulfill it, and it won't. But the second thing is when someone lives in poverty and there's nothing they can do, they can't seem to get out of it. They lack purpose, and it sounds to me like what you found in the bodybuilding and in the fitness was you found a new purpose. You found something to focus on.
Yeah, 100%. And even going back to like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if people are at the bottom rung, their purpose is to feed themselves. Their purpose is to put a roof over their head. Their purpose is that. That's what they're finding more of their purpose in, for sure. And what I found at that time was something that I actually loved and something that I was good at as a coach. So the bodybuilding gave me, I've talked about this before, it was almost like this tunnel vision. Nothing else mattered other than training, eating, sleeping, repeating, and that's all I cared about. I got a job with the gym owner at the time, Dave Fox. He still owns that gym, Pro Gym. He gave me a job on there then, so I worked behind reception, and I was happy out. I was quite content. I was doing something that I loved. I was getting to train, and I had focus, as you said. I had purpose and meaning to my days. And so many people, I think, are devoid of that, and it can cause a lot of internal conflict. It can cause a lot of self sabotage patterns, so called self sabotage patterns, destructive behaviors. But a lot of those things are nudges to get us back into alignment, to be who we're supposed to be, to live in the hierarchy of our values and get on the right track again. So, yeah, 100%. I think what I got mostly was meaning and purpose for sure.
And then the interesting thing also about purpose, I find, is that purpose walks you down a road. That's my experience. It's not necessarily the end. So at that point in time, your purpose was the fitness. So obviously that began to lead you in a new direction, and that took you down the roads. So what came after that? You continued working in gyms. You eventually got into setting up your own businesses.
Yeah, so after that competition, which was around 2005, I started as a personal trainer, one-to-one personal trainer. And my books was kind of pretty full within a short space of time. Started getting really good results for people. I was driven. I could see that, right, I've got an opportunity here to actually create a career and a business. I started earning like decent money for the first time. So I was feeling, right, okay, I'm pretty motivated here, and I'm actually getting to do something that I really enjoy and love. Probably about a year or so after that, Paul, I created my first business, which was like a boot camp style gym, and it was the first of its kind in Derry. And then that kind of quickly exploded, and it started to grow. And we had different places and satellite places as well too. So the fitness scene and the fitness business began to grow pretty rapidly then, um, and that lasted right up to last year. So I had a fitness business right up until last year. Um, but probably over the last 6 or 7 years, Paul, I was really more interested in the mindset, psychology, human behavior. And if I look back at that thread the whole way through, that's probably always been there. Because most of the stuff that I was looking at, and most of the books that I read, most of the things that I studied, yes, there was obviously nutrition and training and all those things, but it was always more so around why do we do the things that we do. I was more interested in that
Mm.
because I was more interested in why I was doing the things that I was doing and looking to grow and evolve myself. Because I found that the more that I started to work on myself at different levels in my own business, I would maybe hit certain blocks. It was always about me. It was never about what was going on outside. If I wanted to excel and move even further forward, I just learned the process that I had to work on me first. So a lot of the studying that I've done in and around those areas was first and foremost for me to understand who I was and to work on myself. And when I started making those shifts and changes and seeing that, I was inspired to share that with others, inspired to coach other people doing that, and inspired to teach that as well too.
So what did that work on yourself look like? How did that begin? What sort of work were you doing?
In terms of coaching,
Working on yourself. when you had that realization, I need to start working on myself, not just the fitness side of it.
Yeah. So it started first, Paul, with like books, reading different books, doing different courses, like hiring coaches and mentors. And then that kind of led more down into the path of being coached and starting to look at some of the unconscious patterns that kept repeating
Mhm.
themselves. Why was I doing this? Like, what were the things that I needed to address? What were some of the fears, the insecurities, the shames, the guilt, etc. And I was starting to work on a lot of that stuff over periods of time, starting to get myself aligned with what was really important for me, starting to get myself aligned with my values, and starting to getting clarity on what was actually really important for me, getting clarity on what I actually really wanted. So that was through, as I said, books, podcasts, coaches, mentors, and then courses and courses. I've done NLP, I've done breath work, hypnotherapy. I studied a lot of those principles as well too. So yeah, I've taken elements of those. I became a breathwork facilitator and a breathwork coach. So all the things that a lot of the times I was interested in understanding and doing the bits and pieces for myself, I then went back and started to become educated on and get qualified on, because I was like, right, okay, I could use this, I could use that, I could use this. And the more tools that I have, the more I'm able to take and use and implement with other people.
So this is something I'm fond of talking about. Also, this idea of understanding our core values and this uniqueness we all have. Um, would you maybe talk a little about that, about how you came to the understanding and just how fundamental it is to how you position your life today?
Yeah, for sure. I suppose I'll take it back then. 2016, my father had passed away, and someone had given me the book, The Breakthrough Experience by Dr. Demartini. I became familiar with Dr. Demartini through The Secret, like most people. Um,
Yeah.
Someone gave me that book, and then I started reading that book, and I wanted to know more. Probably around 2019, 2020, I started deep diving more into his work. And he speaks a lot about values. It's one of the
Mhm.
core principles that he has.
It's central to everything he teaches. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I did his master plan for life, and then I did the breakthrough experience as a course. And when I did the breakthrough experience, I was like, something shifted for me on that course. I was like, again, right, I want to know what that is. How do I take that? How do I
Mhm.
use that? How do I teach that? So I became a qualified facilitator. And then I became a qualified values facilitator through the DeMartini method also. So I'd say that John's work has probably had the biggest impact on me in terms of really using that as a tool to help other people. So he speaks about values, and a lot of the times in society, Paul, values comes under kind of like societal idealisms, morals and
Mhm.
ethics, and his perspective on it is completely different because it's an internal look at what your life is demonstrating is actually really important for you. Because in society, and especially in business, people will fall under I need to be doing this, I should be doing that, I have to be doing this, etc. And it's more about understanding what does your life demonstrate? Because all the,
So I think that's a really key point for anyone listening, because I'm very familiar with Jen DiMartini's work. I'm trying to hear this through the ears of someone who's not, um, and and this central principle that the values are something internal. They're what our life reveals. I think so. You've used the word demonstrate, and I think that's a key fundamental to this thing. That it's not about searching in the ether of what are my values, love, peace, freedom, whatever. It's about what is your life demonstrating to you today. So someone's driving along in their car, listen to this, and they go, well, how do I know what my life is demonstrating? Because, you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years of age and you're living your life. You are that goldfish in the bowl. I mean, how do you spot, how do you start seeing, how can someone start seeing what their life is demonstrating to them as to what their values are and how they might see where there's misalignment with their values and how they're living?
yeah, well, if they start to look at what their life is demonstrating by actually looking and seeing
Yeah.
what do I do every single day, what do I find most important, where am I focused, what,
Well, see, they might be two distant things, because it might be, well, what I friggin' do every day is I get up at 6 a.m., I drive for an hour and a half, I work in a job I don't like, I drive,
yeah,
I drive home, I route the wife, I put the kids to bed, I get up. So
yeah. But if it was
they go. my life demonstrating something to me that's not very fulfilling.
Not necessarily. Your perception of it might need to be shifted, because if you didn't find it that important, you just wouldn't do it. If you didn't find a benefit in it, you wouldn't do it. So you might have,
So that's a really interesting point. You're deriving some benefit from doing it.
yeah, you might have an expectation of what you think it should be, but if it
Okay.
was that important, then you would go do that thing. So it's not to say that there might be more fulfilling things there for sure, or you might be
Mhm.
living and you might be subordinate into somebody else's values because you have to work in a business, etc. But if it
Mhm.
wasn't valuable to you, you wouldn't derive any benefit from it. And the likelihood of you doing it is probably very, very minimal. So you're going to work to provide for your family because you value your family. You're going to
Mhm.
work to provide for your health and fitness or travel or whatever it
Mhm.
might be. You're perceiving enough benefit in it to go and do that. So
Mhm.
therefore it's a value. So therefore you're actually focused on it. You're doing those actions. So if you look at your habits and your behaviors and you look at what your life's demonstrating, that's what's important for you. That's what you have a value in. And the hierarchy of those values will be different for everybody. So one person might value family higher, one person might value business higher, one person might value health and fitness and travel higher. What I like to do with the people that I coach and work with, Paul, is to take a wee bit of a deeper dive into that. So let's say they have a high value in business. Yeah, but what is it that you actually get from it? So like looking at specific needs that people have, a lot of the times you might get those needs met by one thing, another person might get those needs met by another thing. So if you've got a value in business, you might have a need there for validation, you have a need there for security, you've got a need there for um, inspiration or connection or impact or whatever it might be. So individually, those things are going to be different again for every single person. And here's the thing about that is the values are usually shaped from the voids that we've had. So the highest value that you have is usually trying to fulfill the biggest void that you've experienced. So if we're getting those needs met in that value, then that's the thing that's going to take up all of our time. That's the thing that we're going to gravitate towards most. That's the thing that we're trying to fulfill most. So we might have an idea of what it's supposed to be, but if our life is demonstrating something else, then that's usually showing us where it's where what's most important for us at that time. Can I share a story? Give you a wee bit of an example on this.
Please, please.
So I was coaching a girl one time, and she had said to me, she said, "Seamus, I just feel completely disorganized," and she says, "and it's really starting to get me down." And I says, "Okay, like, give me an example. Run me through your day. Tell me what your day consists of." And she says, I get up in the mornings and she says, I have to get the kids ready for school. She says, I get them ready for school, uniforms on, breakfast done, school bags ready, etc. Out the door, into the car, take them to school. She says, then I leave them off. Then I come home and I tidy the house, I get the house ready, tidy it up, blah, blah, blah. I go back, get them from school. She says, I come back after school, she says, and I get their homeworks done, get the uniforms off, get them ready again. She says, and then I get the dinner ready. She says, and then I feel like I'm sitting down at night, and I haven't got anything done. And I says,
Mhm.
your day sounds pretty organised to me. I says, who are you comparing yourself to? And she says, what do you mean? I says, well, you obviously have a high value in family, and that's what your life is demonstrating. Your kids are really important for you, and you're organised in those areas. You're going to be disorganised in the areas that you think are important for you when you compare yourself to somebody else. So if we start looking at what our life actually demonstrates, we'll see what we find important. And the biggest thing that I see, Paul, from, and again, this is work that I did on myself and from everybody else that I coach, is the comparison of what we think it should be rather than what it is. David Hume talked about that back in the 1800s. He was a Scottish philosopher. He called it the ought versus the is. And the ought is what we think it should be, and the is what it is. And so many times we get caught up in the shoulds and we think it should be this and we think it should be that. But if we can appreciate what our life is demonstrating, we can get more meaning and purpose and value in it. That's not to say that you might not want to shift and change, of course. But I think that from the values perspective that we're talking about, if we get caught up in societal values and sometimes morals and ethics that we ultimately can't live by all the time, then we think that we can fall into the trap of beating ourselves up a lot of the times because we're trying to live according to somebody else's values instead of understanding what's truly important for us and living by those.
I think that's fundamental to all of this, isn't it? And I know what anytime I listen to John DeMartini, I mean, he'll speak on many subjects. He never speaks without talking about values because it kind of is underlying to everything. Um, the analogy I've used at time is that you're a small child and you're standing in the Aviva Stadium or something, big football stadium, and there's 80,000 people, your parents, your siblings, teachers, priests, society, government, everyone has a voice telling you what you should think, what you should believe, how you should live. And you're a small child, but you have this notion already of this is who I am, this is how I'd like to live my life. But you're in the middle of a football stadium with 80,000 people shouting at you. And eventually you stop hearing what it is you want to pursue in your life and you only hear what life wants you to pursue. And I think now we start listening to that for so much, but everyone we know also is in listening to that voice in the stadium. So no one recognizes that they're not listening to what the inner guidance is. And then eventually you reach a point where you've completely forgotten there's anything but the outer voice. And I think this is fundamentally why people struggle to know who am I, what do I want, why am I here, what should I do with my life. It's this thing, they're doing what they feel they ought to do, what they feel society's telling them to do, and they're just no longer listening to what's going on inside. It seems to me that that's the root of a huge amount of unhappiness in the world.
Yeah, 100%. Um, because we all want to be ourselves in some way or form. But if we're constantly subordinating to somebody else and thinking we have to do X, Y, and Z and live in somebody else's values, then we're constantly minimizing ourselves. And how you know that you're doing something that's of true importance, that's actually highest in your priorities, is you'll feel it. When we do the thing that's really important for us, that's highest in our values, our energy goes up. We radiate that
Mhm.
energy out. When it's really low on our priorities and lowest in our values, there's a gravitational pull, our energy comes down. And a lot of times we need people or other things to try and bring us back up again. So your psychology will tell you, and your physiology will also tell you as well, even by just looking at your energy and how you feel. So I've always got energy for these things: podcasts, coaching, speaking, teaching. My energy goes up in those things. But there's other areas in my life, and there's other areas in my business where my energy will drop. Those are the areas that
Mhm.
I know aren't really that important for me. And if I can stick to what's really truly important for me, which is coaching, teaching, speaking, health and fitness, those things, then I'm getting to be more myself. I'm getting to be my authentic version. And I'm not minimizing myself in comparison to somebody else. So when we subordinate and live in other people's values, we don't feel like ourselves. And we're getting the nudges a lot of the times. If we can become aware in our behaviors, in our habits, in our psychology, in our physiology, to guide us back to be ourselves more. Now, I get that people are in jobs and careers and work. So instead of thinking that it should be something else, find the benefit in it. How is this actually really serving my highest values? Because most people will think that people are going to work for the values in the company, but they're going to work to fulfill their own needs and their own values. But you can look at what you're doing within that company and see how showing up every single day is benefiting your family, it's benefiting you financially, it's benefiting your health, it's benefiting all these different areas. So you can link that you can link the actions that you're doing, you can link the job and the position that you're in your career, etc., to your other highest values so that you find more meaning and purpose in it and it doesn't feel like a push. Instead, it becomes a pull.
Well, also, I've heard you say before, but this idea of being on the way instead of in the way, I don't know if that's a Tony Robbins thing or a DeMartini thing or where that comes from. But I think you spoke about perspective earlier, and I think that's really interesting. The perspective of someone who's, getting up and working all day long and is flat out, maybe doesn't like their job and they feel resentful. Um, and you nicely brought the back to going, but that may demonstrate a value because why are you ultimately doing that? Well, I'm doing that because I want to take care of my family. So you're revealing now you have a very high value in family. And because you have a very high value on your family, you're willing to go out and do this work. Now that realization may then shift your perception to one of appreciation and gratitude because well I do have to work hard, but I've now gratitude for what it gives me. And I think that when you're from that place of gratitude, you can sit back and go, well, it is actually serving me, it's serving me enormously well, but I might like to do it differently, I might like a different role. you're now in a position of appreciation, gratitude, and opportunity, and and so you may go, actually, I need to change job, or I need to change something about, I need to shift.
Mm.
And I think you're in a much more powerful position to do that when you're aware of what your motivation is, and when you come to it from a place of appreciation and gratitude, as opposed to resentment. It's just a complete shift in your psychology, which I think can be very powerful.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll give you an example on that, Paul. Is for years, and this was a big reason why I wanted to study a lot of this work. Also, was um, for years I would coach people on health and fitness, and one person would get a result, and then
Mhm.
one person wouldn't get a result. One person would get a result and keep it. The other person would get a result and lose it. And I would see loads of motivated people come into the gym in January, every single January.
Yeah.
February, the same motivated people who said at the start of the year that this was the year they're going to get in the best shape of their life were gone. So only a certain percentage of people stayed. And what I started to discover and understand was not everybody values health and fitness. We all know how important it is, but not
Mhm.
everybody values it. Not everybody values going out to work. Not everybody values family. Not everybody values business. We all have a unique fingerprint of values that's important to us. But if I can get to understand the person better, and I can get to understand what they actually really do value, then I can link the thing that they want to do that's lower in that priority to something that's higher, so they find more meaning and purpose in it. So let's say, as an example, someone came into the gym to me, they wanted to get fitter, stronger, and healthier. They had a high value in business. Their life demonstrated that, but it didn't demonstrate that they had a high value in health and fitness. So if I link the benefits of them becoming fitter, stronger, and healthier in terms of how it benefits their business, and they can start to see that, list that, create as many different benefits as possible, then they're going to find more motivation and inspiration and drive, because now they can direct it to something that they actually really truly prioritize, that's high in their priorities. So what's the benefits to your business if you become fitter, stronger, and healthier? Well, start to show up better,
Mhm.
start to show up with more confidence, start to show up as a better leader, start to have more energy, all these different things. My ability to be able to handle challenges starts to increase because I'm now starting to look after myself. My sleep's improving, and we start to list and list and list and list. Now I've linked the low value to a high value, so I start to bring that higher in the priorities. So the habits and behaviours begin to shift and change. Because as human beings, we only do anything when we perceive enough benefit in it, according to what we value most. So link the low value, the thing that you say you want to do but you don't actually do, link it to an area that's really important for you, make enough links, and over time, your habits and behaviour will begin to shift and change because you're finding more meaning and purpose in now doing that.
Well, your motivation shifts because you understand why you're doing it. And I'm wondering, you spoke earlier about the fact that you began in the health and fitness world, and then you realized that a big motivation, sorry, a big determination at how successful people would be in that would be their mindset. And I'm wondering now, as you work with high achievers, do you find the opposite is also true? Do you have some high achievers where you're working mindset, and you go, okay, but to achieve the results you want to improve your mindset, you're going to have to start taking care of your physical well-being, because you can't separate one from the other, I don't think.
100%. At all, it's what I noticed in that was it kind of came back full circle. So I started to implement a lot more of that. Now, there's different elements of that style of coaching, I suppose. But if I'm working with a CEO and they're being challenged and they're maybe going through certain challenges in business, whatever it might be, but they're not sleeping properly, they're not hydrating
Mhm.
properly, there's no movement, there's none of those fundamentals that are being taken care of that has a big difference on your psychology. We need to address those first. So if you're looking to perform at an optimal level and you're not sleeping, forget about it. Like, you're
Mhm.
not going to shift and change your mindset to be more empowered when you're not sleeping, because you showing up with 1 or 2 hours of sleep or broken sleep for a long period of time is probably giving you a fraction of who you could be, a fraction of how you could show up.
Mhm.
And your emotional stability a lot of the times when you're not sleeping properly is in the shitter, let's say. So we all know that we've had a bad night's sleep or a couple of bad nights sleep, how you feel. Then you pile on top responsibilities, you pile on top staff, you pile on top um, employees, all the things that comes with running companies and businesses, etc. On top of a few nights bad sleep. If you're not aware of that and you don't know what to address, then your norm a lot of the time becomes that, just that baseline of how you've been feeling, maybe operating at 30 or 40% of your potential. So for sure, what I'll address a lot of times is the fundamentals: sleep, hydration, nutrition, all of those things, so that you're starting to think better, feel better, show up better, and then getting you clear on a few other things, definitely.
It's interesting in just what you're saying there. I can see how that couple of minute conversation with a CEO and entrepreneur who wasn't looking after the health, they could begin to do that linking you're talking about. Of they begin to realize, oh, so I value my business, I don't value health and fitness. But by not taking care of that, I'm damaging my business. And then they begin to take care of the health and the health and well-being, and it raises up their priorities because they see the results. They receive the results on the other end because they've now linked a low value to a high value.
Yeah, 100%. And when they start to make those connections, it starts to become that bit easier for them. Now, again,
Yeah,
it's I had the perception when I was coaching more in health and fitness that everybody should value health and fitness, and I
yeah,
would project my values on
yeah.
clients, which, looking back now, probably wasn't the best method. But I just thought that that's kind of what you should do. You're projecting your values. But the more that I've understood, if I get them really clear on theirs, and I can link the thing that they want to do, but they're not
Mm.
to what's important for them, they're going to find more inspiration. Which means I'm not having to push somebody; they're wanting to do it. I'm not there to.
Well, pushing never works. It only works temporarily, and as soon as you're gone, um, I know that I think we've missed it now. Probably a week or two ago, you did a webinar on burnout, and it seems like some of what we're talking about. I mean, I'd be interested to know kind of a highlight of what the teams you were discussing in that webinar, because it seems like we're drifting into that area of. Because, I mean, I go back maybe 15, 20 years ago, and I was burning out something awful. But when I reflect, I had to radically change my life. Maybe it was 20 years ago. But when I reflect on why I was burning out, you could say, yeah, you were growing a business, you're working really hard, etc., etc., etc. That's true, but the real reason I was burning out is I was doing stuff that was very low value
Yeah,
to me. So the work I was doing wasn't burning me out. Is I need to be doing something different. I mean, I need to be doing something different that was high in my value. So I'm wondering what sort of tips and insights you had in that webinar for people.
you hit the nail on the head there, Paul. Like, when you're doing low value, low priority things over a long period of time, and it's not inspiring you, it's not something that you feel is most authentic with you, you'll burn out, because you don't burn out doing the things you love. That's not to say you don't
Mm.
rest and recuperate and those things,
Yeah.
but you will very rarely, if at all, burn out when you're doing the things you really love, because you're inspired to do it. You've got the energy to do it. You're focused
Mm.
on doing it. You're organized in doing it. You're happy to go and do those things. It's not a push.
Mm.
So one of the first key principles in understanding burnout is looking at your values, for sure. Looking at your priorities. Am I doing the thing that is actually really inspiring for me, or am I not? Or let's say in business specifically, because a lot of times in business, especially as a business owner, people think that they have to be doing absolutely everything, and they're afraid to delegate things out. They're afraid to automate
Mhm.
things out. They don't want to pass things over to other people, so they want to wear all the hats. And you're wearing all the hats, and you're not doing the thing that's actually most important for you. And a lot of times with guys that I work with, Paul, and coach, they've maybe grown the business to a certain point, and they can still like they've delegated a lot of those things out, but they can still kind of feel like they're burning out. And the reason that they're burning out again is it's actually the loss of that purpose and meaning, because the thing that they've actually done that actually helped them grow the business, they've maybe delegated out to
Mm.
somebody else, and now it's like, who am I? What do I do? What do I actually get from this business? So it's almost like a searching again. So it's getting themselves aligned
Mm.
again. Burnout can come under many things, for sure. You've got sleep and nutrition and hydration and all those things. But the biggest thing for me is the understanding of the hierarchy of your values. And when you're misaligned in those, you're going to burn out a whole lot faster.
And I think what's interesting about what you're saying is that because people listen to this, they can imagine. I mean, I've been in the world of values for maybe 20 years, and it's something that understanding has evolved and deepened and over the period of time. And I can think of someone watching this and listening going, yeah, but it sounds easy. I'm not really sure what my values are. But I think you've just nailed it in that conversation. If something is making you feel good and buzzing you with energy, and then that's high on your values. And if it's not, if it's draining you, so the very simple thing, a very simple thing, I think your body was telling you. When I look back at that time, the turning point for me was thinking I was going to have a massive heart attack one day in the office. But that was my body my body communicating to me that you're in a situation that I didn't have the language at the time of high value hierarchy of values, but that was my body communicating to me that Paul, you're in a situation you should not be in. And when I look at now how I live my days much more intentionally, um, I almost never have that would have that sense. Why? Because I'm living, because I know I'm clear on what my values are, and I've intentionally created and designed a life that fulfill those values. And it's a complete shift in how you feel every day. That's a kind of a real beacon for anybody listening. I would think. And how do you feel? How do you feel about what you're doing?
Yeah, 100%. As you said, like your energy and your physiology was trying to get you back to authenticity. It was trying to get you back in
Mm.
line. And sometimes we've, as let's say, again using that term, high performers, ignore that, and it's like I need to keep pushing on. I need to get to this next milestone. I need to get to this next target. I need to get to this next thing because when I get to this next thing, then that's going to give me what it is that I'm looking for. But if you're constantly climbing that, as they say, the wrong ladder of success because you're not aligned with what's most important for you, then the next thing's never going to give it, and you're just on that road to burnout faster. So it's a self reflection. It's taking a step back and looking and going, what's truly most important for me here, and if it is within business, what do I need to do to get this off my plate? What are the things that I need to get away from so that it's not draining my energy? What can I automate? What can I delegate? What do I need to eliminate? Who do I need to get all these other things off to so that I can stick to priority? Because the thing is as a business owner, when you stick to that priority, you get to show up different. You get to show up with more energy. You get to think about the future of the business. You get to think about the vision.
Mm.
Because if you're stuck doing low priority stuff and you're stuck doing the things you don't want to expand on that. But when you're doing the thing that you really love, you want to expand. You have a future vision because you don't want to grow into more of the pains that you're currently experiencing by not doing the thing that's most important for you. So it's crucial that you get to understand what that might be for you because that's the thing that's going to help you expand and grow.
I can see. I mean, I've had many coaches and mentors over the years, and I can see why somebody unfamiliar with this work might need a coach or a mentor to help them tease it out. But the simplicity of it is if you're living in a way that is burning you out or tiring you out all the time, you're you're living your day in low priorities, and you need to need to shift it. So if the question someone has as well, am I living to my values or am I not? Your body's energy, I think, will tell you that. Um,
You can change that also, Paul. You can, if you don't have the ability right now, let's say, to shift and change that, if you're in a job and a career, then the biggest thing that you can do is change your perception of it. Because the
mm,
difference between motivation and inspiration is your perception. The thing that you find that you have to motivate yourself towards, you might not really prioritize and see it as a low value. But if you see how it's actually benefiting you in many different areas, and how by doing this is serving a bigger purpose for you in other areas of your life, then your perception begins to shift and change. And when your perception of that begins to shift and change, a lot of the times you let go of that tension or the frustration or the friction, which then has an impact on your physiology as well too, because now you're finding more meaning in doing those things. So it's not necessarily about maybe having to like throw the toys at the pram and just go right. I'm away to do something
mm.
else, but shifting and changing your perception of what you're actually doing, so that you can find more meaning and purpose in it. Until such times that you might want to make those changes for sure.
Yeah, but I think you're better making those changes from a point of, I mean, what direct, unless you become clear on what your values are, what direction are you going to head in? You're going to head away from something. But if you're not yet clear on what you need to head towards, what are you rushing off to? Um, there's been a huge amount of value in this. I would think for listeners, as we come towards the end, I'm wondering for someone who's new to this. I mean, you and I have been around for a long time, and certainly the I did the breakthrough experience twice, many years ago, and part of the breakthrough, the Demartini really had at the time had these value sheets, and I pulled out my four top values, and after that, I over a period of time began to completely narrow my focus into four values, four buckets, um, and realize that my entire fulfillment was in those four buckets. I mean, there's a million things to do in the world, but Paul being fulfilled is living in those four buckets. And I say to people, if you follow me around for a year, 365 days of a year, 24 hours a day, you'll look at every activity and you'll drop it into one of those buckets. Um, and that becomes a fulfilled life, but it also means that the life energy I have or you have, we're focusing on creating the life we want. I'm not putting energy into something I don't want. I'm just wondering, because you've obviously worked with a lot of people, and as a takeaway for people who are listening to this and are less familiar, what are some of the actionable habits that you think people could take away from this that would begin to get them on the right road?
Even you just said that as well too. Like your top four, they almost become like one when you're really
Yeah.
congruent with what's most important for you. Because
Well, they link together very closely.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm the same.
Or one activity or one behavior, you'll go, it supports two or three different buckets.
Yeah, 100%. Um, this was a question I was asked in a podcast recently as well too, and somebody said, "But I don't really know what I want."
Mm.
And I said, "Yeah, because when you ask someone a question like, what do you want?' It's boom, it's like a minefield. But you'll
Mm.
answer me faster when I ask you, what do you not want?
Yeah.
Who do you not want to be? How do you not want to live?
Yeah.
How do you not want to feel? Like, how do you not want to show up? What do you not want as your financial income? What do you not want as a body that you're living in? Okay, so what are the polar opposites of that? And am I doing the thing that's going to lead me there? And if I'm
Yeah.
not, what changes do I need to make? And that's something
Yeah.
very, very simple that can get you to be more self reflective and go, okay, I'm not heading down the right path here. So, what do I need to do? What do I need to shift? What do I need to change? What habits do I need to get rid of? And what habits do I need to bring in? And a question I get people to ask is this habit moving me closer to who I want to be? Or is it pulling me
Mm.
away from who I want to be? And if it's pulling me away from who I want to be, then it's a question, okay, why? Why am I repeating that pattern? What am I getting stuck in that process for? So sometimes it's easier to look at where you don't want to be and then make the changes that's needed in order for you to move towards where you do want to be.
And that evening, sitting on the floor in your own blood in a flattened dairy after being released from a prison cell, um, I think you were getting a very clear vision of I'm 22 years of age. I am not spending the next 60 years living this way. Some people do, but you got the opportunity to very clearly see I'm not spending. Yeah, I suppose you could see very clearly this is how I do not want to live. This is clearly the behavior that has led me here. You don't have to be a genius to figure out if I continue this behavior, I will continue to be in this situation. So I need some I need some new behaviors. So yeah, that seemed like a really powerful place to start. What do I not want? And what is it I need to do differently so I don't get that result? It's not complicated when you put it that way, is it?
Yeah, 100%. But I think it's just very easy for people to focus on because if you think about what you do want, there's a multitude of things. But if you
Yeah,
focus on what you don't want, it kind of simplifies it for you. And it's an
yeah,
easier process. And 100%, like at that time, when I crashed the car and everything else, that wasn't who I wanted to be. Deep down, even at that time as well, Paul, when I was caught up in those patterns, I was trying to be somebody else, was trying to like fit in, I was trying to be with a crowd and all that sort of nonsense, and it wasn't who I was. And deep down, I knew within myself that this isn't who I am. This isn't what I should be doing. This isn't what I want to be doing. And it took a long process and it took a scary event to literally kind of wake me up and get back on track.
Well, Seamus, thank you. It's time for us all to wake up, figure what we don't want, and figure how we might start heading in the right direction. Seamus, before we wrap up, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can get me on LinkedIn, my website, seamusfox.com. You can get me on all social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, etc.
Excellent. We will put links to your website, LinkedIn, your podcast, etc., in the show notes. Seamus, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very, very much.
Really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.